At Christmas dinner my sister opened the door, rolled her eyes, and said, "We don't want you here, go ruin someone else's holiday." I looked past her and saw the whole family laughing around the table, so I just said, "Got it." 10 minutes later my dad burst through the door, shouting my name. You know that moment when your entire world shifts? When something so utterly soul-crushing happens, it fundamentally alters who you are, leaving an indelible mark. That moment for me was 2 years ago, on a snow-dusted Christmas Eve, when my own sister slammed a door in my face, effectively banishing me from my family's holiday. It wasn't just cold, it was a dagger to the heart. I'd driven 3 grueling hours through a blizzard, the kind where the snow piled up faster than your wipers could clear it, holding on to this almost childlike anticipation. In the passenger seat, a bag of carefully wrapped gifts, my little offerings of love. My GPS finally announced I'd arrived at my parents' house, the same colonial I grew up in, now glowing with that warm, inviting light against the winter darkness. I grabbed the presents, boots crunching through the fresh powder, and peered through the window. The dining room table was set with Mom's best china, the chandelier casting a soft glow over what looked like the entire family. My chest tightened with a mix of excitement and relief. I was home. I knocked. Gwen answered. My younger sister, 3 years my junior, with her perfectly curled blonde hair, wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. The second her eyes met mine, that perfect smile just evaporated. It turned into something cold, dismissive. Like she was looking at a stranger. "We don't want you here, Kelly," she said flatly, her voice cutting through the festive quiet. "Go ruin someone else's holiday." I just stood there, snowflakes melting in my hair. Behind her, everyone was at the table. Mom in her red dress, Dad carving the turkey, Uncle Roger mid-story with his hands, Aunt Kristen laughing so hard she was wiping tears. My cousins, my grandparents, everyone. The whole family, having Christmas without me. And they'd clearly been at it for a while. "Got it," I managed to say, my voice a hollow whisper. I turned and walked back to my car, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my keys. The presents stayed in the bag, untouched. I didn't cry then. Not yet. I just drove. Headed anywhere but there, the radio playing cheerful carols that now felt like a cruel, mocking soundtrack. 10 minutes later, my phone exploded. Dad's name flashed across the screen again and again. Then Mom. Then numbers I didn't even recognize. I let them all go to voicemail, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. Christmas morning, I woke up in a highway motel room that smelled faintly of bleach and stale cigarettes. My phone showed 43 missed calls. A string of texts. From Dad, apologetic at first, then angry, *, "Where are you? Gwen said you just left. Call me back right now, Kelly." * from Mom, pleading, *, "Sweetheart, there's been a misunderstanding. Please come back." And then, Gwen's, *, "You're seriously going to make this about you?" Typical Kelly. * that last one. That was the one that made something inside me snap. For years, I'd been the family punching bag, the one who didn't quite measure up. Gwen, she was the golden child. Married to Bradley Morrison, a hedge fund manager with a Mercedes and a Hamptons vacation home. She lived in a 5-bedroom colonial in Ridgewood, had 2 perfect kids in private school, and chaired charity galas. Me? I was a high school English teacher living in a 1-bedroom in New York, driving a 10-year-old Honda. My biggest splurge was a fancy coffee maker. In their eyes, I was practically invisible, except when they needed someone to feel superior to. But that Christmas Eve rejection? That was different. Turning me away while the whole family watched and, for all I knew, laughed about it, that crossed a line I hadn't known existed until that gut-wrenching moment. I spent Christmas Day alone, back in my apartment, eating Chinese takeout and watching old movies. When I finally listened to Dad's voicemail, his voice was frantic. "Kelly, I don't know what happened. Your mother and I didn't know you weren't invited. Gwen said she'd called you and you declined because of work. When I asked where you were, she said you'd stopped by but had to leave for an emergency. We didn't know the truth until your Aunt Kristen saw your car pulling away and asked why you were leaving so fast. Call me back. This is unacceptable. So Gwen had lied. She'd orchestrated the whole thing. Made sure I showed up just late enough that everyone was already seated, distracted. So she could deliver her little speech and send me away. Then she'd covered it with more lies to keep the party going without interruption. The realization hit me in waves over the next few days. This wasn't spontaneous cruelty born from holiday stress. Gwen had planned this. She timed my arrival, positioned herself to answer the door, prepared her dismissive little speech. The sheer malice required for that level of calculation made me feel physically sick. I spent the week between Christmas and New Year's replaying every family interaction from the past 5 years, seeing them through this new, chilling lens. The comments about my quaint little apartment that I'd once taken as teasing? Now they felt like deliberate digs. The way Gwen always managed to announce her latest accomplishment right after I'd shared something positive about my own life. How she'd introduce me to her friends as my sister Kelly, the teacher, with just enough emphasis to make it sound like a consolation prize. I remembered Dad's 60th birthday. I mentioned getting a commendation from my principal for innovative curriculum design. Gwen immediately launched into a story about Bradley's promotion to senior vice president, complete with details about their upcoming trip to the Maldives. By the time she finished, no one even remembered my news. Or my 30th birthday dinner, where Gwen arrived 90 minutes late, apologizing loudly about her charity gala planning meeting running over. She spent the rest of the evening taking phone calls about centerpiece arrangements while I tried to have conversations around her constant interruptions. Mom actually shushed me at one point because Gwen was handling something important. The patterns were everywhere once I started looking. Gwen had spent years positioning herself as the successful daughter, the one who'd made something of herself, while casting me as the well-meaning but unremarkable sister who'd settled for a simple life. And our family had bought into that narrative completely. What made it worse was recognizing my own complicity. I had accepted the role they assigned me. I'd laughed off the barbed comments, minimized my own achievements to avoid seeming competitive, stayed quiet when Gwen dominated conversations. I'd made myself smaller and smaller, thinking that was what family harmony required. I called Dad back on December 26th. I'm sorry, he said immediately. We had no idea. Gwen swears it was a misunderstanding, but Kristen told us what she saw. Your mother is devastated. Where was Mom when Gwen answered the door? I asked. A long pause. In the kitchen getting the gravy. And you? Carving the turkey. He sighed. Sweetheart, I know how this looks, but we would never deliberately exclude you. You're our daughter, Kelly. Gwen's your daughter, too, I shot back. And she deliberately excluded me while you all sat there laughing. We weren't laughing at you. We didn't know you were there. I wanted to believe him. A part of me did. But another part remembered all those family gatherings where Gwen's accomplishments dominated the conversation, while mine were dismissed with polite nods. All the times Mom asked why I couldn't be more ambitious like my sister. All the moments I felt like a supporting character in my own family story. I need some space, I told Dad. I'll call when I'm ready. I didn't go to New Year's. Or Mom's birthday in January. I stopped answering family calls, sending only brief, polite texts confirming I was alive. When pressed for reasons, I kept it simple. I'm working through some things. I need time. Gwen, meanwhile, launched a campaign to paint herself as the victim. According to my cousin, Vanessa, who kept me updated despite my silence, Gwen told everyone I was being dramatic and vindictive over an honest mistake. She claimed she'd thought I couldn't make it and was just surprised when I showed up unannounced. The tears she cried at the family Valentine's Day dinner, which I skipped, were apparently very convincing. Mom believed her. Dad seemed torn. My relatives divided into camps. Some thought I was overreacting, others were suspicious of Gwen's story after Aunt Kristen shared what she'd witnessed. I threw myself into work. Spring semester meant new students, new lesson plans, a production of Our Town that needed directing. I stayed late grading papers, volunteered for weekend tutoring, said yes to every committee, anything to avoid the hollow ache that came with thinking about that Christmas Eve. In March, my colleague Taylor mentioned her sister was getting married and needed help. "She's completely overwhelmed," Taylor said over lunch. The venue canceled 2 months out. Her maid of honor moved to California, and her fiancé's family keeps trying to take over everything. "It's a disaster." "Tell her to hire a coordinator," I suggested, picking at my salad. She did. The coordinator quit last week because the mothers were driving her crazy. Taylor laughed, but it sounded strained. "Honestly, I think she's about to call the whole thing off just to escape the stress." Something about that resonated deeply. Here was a woman whose special day was being hijacked by other people's agendas and egos, whose voice was getting lost in the chaos of everyone else's opinions. "I could help," I heard myself say. Taylor's eyebrows shot up. "You do event planning?" "No, but I direct high school theater." "Same skill set, different drama," I shrugged. "I'm good at managing chaos and strong personalities, and I have a lot of free time these days." That's how I ended up spending April helping a stranger named Melissa plan her wedding. And it turned out, I had a knack for it. I could negotiate with vendors, mediate family disputes, design timelines that actually worked, and keep everyone focused on what mattered. Melissa's wedding in early May went off perfectly. She cried when she hugged me goodbye. "You saved my sanity," she said. "How much do I owe you, Kelly?" "Nothing. I needed the distraction." She insisted on paying me anyway, a check far more generous than my time warranted. But more importantly, she started recommending me to friends planning their own events. By June, I had 3 clients. By August, I was running a small side business coordinating weddings, and I had a waiting list. My second client, Jessica, had a mother who kept trying to turn her daughter's intimate garden ceremony into a 400-person country club extravaganza. I spent hours on the phone with both of them, translating between their competing visions until we found middle ground that honored what Jessica wanted while still giving her mother a role. "How do you do that?" Jessica asked after one particularly successful mediation. "Get people to hear each other instead of just talking past each other?" "Teaching teenagers for 8 years," I said. "If I can get a classroom of 16-year-olds to have productive discussions about the Scarlet Letter, I can handle wedding family drama." But the truth went deeper. I understood what it felt like to have your voice drowned out by louder personalities. I knew the exhaustion of constantly accommodating other people's needs while your own got dismissed as unimportant. Every bride I helped find her voice felt like reclaiming a small piece of my own. Each success felt like evidence that I had value beyond what my family recognized. These clients didn't care that I drove an old Honda or lived in a modest apartment. They cared that I solved problems, anticipated needs, and made complicated things manageable. They saw skills in me that I'd almost convinced myself didn't matter. The money helped, too. My first 3 clients paid me a combined $8,000 for work I'd done in my spare time. By the time school started again in September, I'd earned more from event planning than I made in a month of teaching. That financial independence was intoxicating in a way I hadn't expected. For the first time in my adult life, I could afford small luxuries without guilt. I bought quality coffee beans. I replaced my worn-out winter coat. I started a savings account with enough cushion that unexpected car repairs wouldn't devastate me. But beyond the material improvements, the business gave me something more valuable, proof that I could build something from nothing. Every client I landed, every successful event I coordinated, every 5-star review I received was evidence that my skills, intelligence, and dedication had worth in the real world, regardless of whether my family acknowledged it. My students noticed the change in me, too. I walked into class that September with a confidence I hadn't possessed in previous years. When Tyler Chen, a chronic troublemaker, tried to derail my lesson on symbolism in The Great Gatsby, I shut it down with humor and authority that surprised both of us. Mr. Chen, if you spend half the energy on your essay that you spend on disrupting my class, you'd probably write something brilliant, I said. Let's try it my way today and see what happens. The class laughed, but it was friendly laughter, not the mean-spirited kind. Tyler actually stayed after class to ask questions about his thesis statement. Other teachers commented on how engaged my students seemed. I'd always been a decent teacher, but I'd always held something back, afraid to take up too much space or demand too much attention. Now, I was asking for what I deserved, both in the classroom and outside it, and people responded positively. Turns out, when you value yourself, others tend to follow suit. The money was good, but what I really loved was the problem solving. Each event was a puzzle with 1,000 moving pieces, and I discovered I was excellent at making those pieces fit together. I was building something that was entirely mine, separate from my family's judgments and expectations. In September, Gwen called me for the first time since Christmas. "Mom says you're not coming to Thanksgiving," she said without preamble. "You need to get over yourself, Kelly." "I'm working on Thanksgiving," I said calmly. "I have a client event, a 50th wedding anniversary party." It was true. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson were renewing their vows, and I'd spent months planning an elegant celebration for 200 guests. "You're seriously choosing work over family because I hurt your feelings 9 months ago?" The casual dismissal in her voice ignited something sharp in my chest. "You didn't hurt my feelings, Gwen. You publicly humiliated me and then lied about it to cover your tracks. There's a difference." "Oh my God, you're still on this?" "I told you it was a misunderstanding." Aunt Kristen saw what happened. She told Dad the truth. A beat of silence. "Kristen exaggerated because she's always been jealous of me. You know how she is." "I know how you are," I said, my voice staying level, almost pleasant. "And I'm done pretending otherwise. Mom's going to be devastated if you skip another holiday." "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you turned me away on Christmas Eve while the whole family watched." I hung up before she could respond, my hands trembling with adrenaline. It felt good. Terrifying, but good. Thanksgiving came and went. The Patterson anniversary party was a huge success, and Mr. Patterson slipped me an extra 1,000 in tip. I spent the actual holiday eating catered leftovers in my apartment, video chatting with Aunt Kristen, who'd also skipped the family gathering in solidarity. "Your mother asked about you at least 20 times, Kristen reported. "Gwen gave this whole speech about how you're being selfish and need to forgive and forget." I almost threw my wine at her. "Thanks for not doing that," I said, smiling. "It was a near thing." She smiled sadly. "I'm proud of you for standing your ground, Kelly, but I hate seeing the family fractured like this." "I'm not the one who fractured it." "No, you're not. But you're the one who gets blamed anyway, because that's easier than holding Gwen accountable." She wasn't wrong. December rolled around, and the pressure intensified. Mom called crying, begging me to come to Christmas, swearing things would be different. Dad sent long emails about the importance of family and forgiveness. Various aunts, uncles, and cousins weighed in, most centered on the idea that I was being stubborn and difficult. Only Aunt Kristen and Vanessa seemed to understand that this wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about refusing to keep sacrificing my dignity to maintain everyone else's comfort. On December 20th, Gwen texted me, "Mom's making your favorite dishes for Christmas. She wants you there. Can you please just come and let this go?" I stared at that message for a long time before typing back, "Why do I have to be the one to let it go? You're the one who slammed the door in my face and lied about it. Have you even apologized?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Finally, I thought you understood it wasn't personal. It was a stressful day and I was overwhelmed. Can we move past it?" "That's not an apology, Gwen." No response. Christmas Eve arrived again, exactly 1 year after the worst holiday of my life. I had a client meeting that morning for a New Year's Eve wedding I was coordinating. Afterward, I sat in my car, watching other people rush around with shopping bags and wrapped packages. Everyone busy with the rituals of the season. My phone rang. Dad. Please come tonight, he said when I answered. Your mother's barely holding it together. She needs all her girls here. Did Gwen apologize? I asked. A long, heavy sigh. She feels terrible about last year. She knows she handled it badly. That's still not an apology, Dad. Why does it have to be formal? Can't you just accept that she's sorry and move on? It's Christmas. It's Christmas because the calendar says so. That doesn't erase what you did or make her behavior acceptable. You're splitting hairs now. Family means forgiving each other. Family also means not treating each other like garbage in the first place. I closed my eyes, willing my voice to stay steady. I love you and Mom, but I'm not going to keep setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. If Gwen wants me there, she can apologize for real. Otherwise, I'm done pretending everything's fine when it's not. You're breaking your mother's heart. Gwen broke mine first. Nobody seemed to care about that. I ended the call. I drove home through snow that looked exactly like last year's snow, past houses decorated exactly like last year's decorations. Everything the same, except me. Around 8 p.m., someone knocked on my apartment door. I opened it to find Aunt Kristen standing there with 2 bags of Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. Merry Christmas, she said. I told your mother I had food poisoning. Figured you could use some company. We ate lo mein and watched Elf on my laptop. And when midnight came and went, she raised her wine glass. To standing up for yourself, she toasted. Even when it's hard, I corrected, clinking my glass against hers. Especially when it's hard. The second Christmas alone should have felt worse than the first. Instead, it felt like relief. Like I'd finally stopped waiting for my family to see my worth and started seeing it myself. January brought an unexpected email. From Vanessa, *huge fight at Mom's New Year's party. Gwen got drunk and told everyone you're being a dramatic bitch. Dad asked what joke she meant. Gwen said the Christmas thing was funny because you looked so pathetic standing there with your presents. Mom started crying. Uncle Roger called Gwen cruel. She left screaming. It's a whole mess. Thought you should know. I read it 3 times, feeling a strange mix of vindication and sadness. I hadn't wanted Gwen to self-destruct. I just wanted her to acknowledge what she'd done. 2 days later, Mom called. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. I didn't want to believe Gwen could be so deliberately unkind. But after what she said at Roger's party, after hearing how she talked about you, I can't pretend anymore. I'm so sorry I didn't listen sooner, Kelly. I sat down slowly on my couch. Thank you. Will you come to dinner? Mom asked. Just you, me, and your father. No Gwen, no extended family. Just us. I'll think about it, I said. That's all I can ask. Dad called next, his voice rough with emotion. I was wrong to pressure you to forgive her before she'd earned it, Kelly. I thought I was keeping the peace, but I was really just protecting the person who didn't deserve protection. I'm sorry. These were the words I'd needed to hear a year ago. Now they felt both healing and bittersweet, like medicine that arrives too late to prevent the wound but might still help it scar cleanly. I agreed to dinner, just the 3 of us at a neutral restaurant. It was awkward at first, everyone carefully navigating around the giant Gwen-shaped hole in the conversation. But gradually we found our rhythm again, talking about my event planning business, Dad's retirement plans, Mom's book club, the easy topics that didn't require confronting painful truths. Your sister's in therapy, Mom mentioned over coffee. Court mandated, actually, Dad added. Her husband threatened to leave unless she got help with her drinking and her temper. Apparently, Christmas wasn't the only time she's been cruel. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded. I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad for her, Mom continued. I'm telling you because I want you to know we finally see who she's become, and we see who you've always been. The strong one. The kind one. We took that for granted. I just want to be seen, I said quietly. Not compared to Gwen, not judged against some imaginary standard. Just seen for who I actually am. We see you now, Dad said. I'm sorry it took so long. February brought an invitation to Gwen's house for what the card called a family healing circle facilitated by her therapist. I declined. Whatever work Gwen needed to do, she needed to do it without an audience and without expecting immediate absolution from the people she'd hurt. The invitation itself was telling, thick cream cardstock with calligraphy, addressed like she was hosting one of her charity luncheons instead of attempting to repair relationships she'd damaged. Even her apology had to be performative, wrapped in aesthetics and formality. According to Vanessa, who attended out of curiosity, the healing circle was exactly as awkward as it sounded. Gwen had arranged chairs in a literal circle in her living room, Vanessa told me over the phone. She served organic tea and gluten-free cookies and expected everyone to share their feelings while her therapist nodded encouragingly. She cried a lot, Vanessa continued, very pretty tears that didn't ruin her makeup. She talked about her struggles with perfectionism and how much pressure she felt to be the successful daughter. Your mom cried, too. Uncle Roger looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. The therapist kept using phrases like radical vulnerability and authentic truth-telling. Did Gwen actually take responsibility for anything specific? I asked. Sort of. She said she'd caused pain and was working on her behavior patterns, but it was all very vague and general. Nothing about Christmas, nothing about lying to the family. Nothing concrete. I wasn't surprised. Real accountability required specificity. It meant naming what you'd done wrong and acknowledging the impact without hedging or softening. Gwen's version sounded like therapy speak designed to create the appearance of growth without the discomfort of genuine reckoning. She asked about you, Vanessa added, wanted to know if you'd gotten her invitation. I did. She asked if I thought you'd ever forgive her. What did you say? I asked. I told her that wasn't my question to answer. What did she say to that? Nothing. Just got this look on her face like she'd bitten into something sour. Then the therapist redirected everyone to talk about moving forward with intention or something. Part of me felt guilty for not attending. Mom had called twice asking me to reconsider, emphasizing how much effort Gwen was putting into therapy and healing. But I'd learned the hard way that my presence wasn't required for Gwen's healing journey. She needed to do that work independently of whether I forgave her. And honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to forgive her. Not in the way people seem to expect, where forgiveness meant everything going back to how it was before. The old dynamic had been toxic, built on me diminishing myself so Gwen could feel superior. I had no interest in resurrecting that pattern. Instead, I focused on building my business. By March, I'd coordinated enough events that I could quit teaching and do planning full-time. It terrified me, leaving the security of a steady paycheck and health insurance, but Aunt Kristen offered to help with startup costs, and several former clients provided glowing testimonials for my website. In April, I hired my first assistant, a recent college graduate named Paige, who had tremendous organizational skills and a calming presence clients loved. In May, we moved into a small office space. In June, a local magazine featured my business in their Entrepreneurs to Watch section. The magazine interview happened almost by accident. A reporter named Lisa Chen had attended one of my clients' weddings as a guest and been impressed by how smoothly everything ran, despite a sudden thunderstorm that forced us to move the ceremony indoors with 30 minutes notice. I watched you redirect 200 people, reorganize the entire setup, and keep the bride from having a meltdown, Lisa said when she called to request the interview. All while staying completely calm. That's a story worth telling. The resulting article was more in-depth than I'd expected. Lisa interviewed several clients, all of whom said embarrassingly nice things about my work. She photographed me in my new office, captured Paige and me collaborating on a timeline, even included a sidebar about the growing trend of skilled professionals leaving traditional careers to start service businesses. The magazine hit stands on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon, my phone had 17 new voicemail messages from potential clients. By Monday, I had inquiries for 9 weddings, 3 corporate events, and 2 milestone birthday parties. The exposure was overwhelming and exhilarating in equal measure. Mom called that week asking if she could buy 5 copies of the magazine to show her friends. Dad sent flowers to my office with a card that said, "Simply proud of you, Kelly." Even Vanessa posted the article on social media with a caption about her brilliant cousin building an empire. The attention felt validating in ways I hadn't realized I needed. For years, my family had treated my teaching career as a placeholder, something I did while waiting for real success to find me. Now, I had tangible proof that I'd created something valuable, and people I'd never met wanted to hire me because of it. But success brought new pressures. With Paige's help, I was managing the increased workload, but barely. We were both working 60-hour weeks, and I could see the exhaustion creeping into her usually cheerful demeanor. I needed more help, which meant more overhead, which meant higher prices, which meant positioning myself as a premium service rather than an affordable option. The business decisions felt endless. Should I hire another full-time assistant or contract with freelancers for busy seasons? Did I need liability insurance beyond what I already carried? Should I start turning down clients who couldn't meet my minimums, or keep saying yes to everything and risk burning out? I discovered Facebook groups for event planners and spent late nights reading threads about pricing structures, difficult clients, vendor relationships, and horror stories that made my problems seem manageable. The community support was invaluable. When a florist delivered the wrong arrangements, a planner in Boston talked me through crisis management. When a client refused to pay her final invoice, a coordinator in Chicago shared her contract language that had held up in small claims court. Through those groups, I also learned I was undercharging significantly. My prices were appropriate for a side hustle, not a full-fledged business with office space and employees. If I wanted this to be sustainable long-term, I needed to value my expertise at market rate. Raising prices felt terrifying. What if clients thought I was gouging them? What if no one hired me anymore? But another planner, a woman named Cheryl, who'd been in business 15 years, put it bluntly, "Honey, if you're booked solid and exhausted, you're too cheap. Raise your prices until you're busy, but not drowning. The clients who bulk aren't your ideal customers anyway." So, I did. I restructured my packages, increased my rates by 40%, and added premium add-ons for services like day of coordination and vendor management. I braced for backlash, angry emails, canceled consultations. Instead, bookings stayed steady. The clients I attracted at the higher price point were generally easier to work with, had more realistic budgets for their visions, and respected my expertise instead of questioning every suggestion. Cheryl had been right. Pricing communicated value, and the right clients understood that quality service wasn't cheap. I sent the article to my parents. Dad called immediately, pride evident in his voice. "Look at you building an empire," he said. "Not an empire," I replied, a small smile playing on my lips. "Just a small business that makes people's special days a little less stressful." "Your mother wants to frame this article." "Dad, it's just a magazine. It's proof that you were right, Kelly. That you didn't need to be like Gwen to be successful. You needed to be like yourself." Something about that simple statement made my throat tight with emotion. "Thanks, Dad." The summer passed in a blur of weddings, corporate events, and milestone celebrations. I was too busy to dwell on family drama, which felt like its own kind of healing. Paige proved invaluable, handling details I would have missed and charming difficult clients with her genuine enthusiasm. In August, an envelope arrived at my office. Inside was a card with a hand-painted watercolor on the front. The message inside, in Gwen's careful handwriting, said, "I've been working with my therapist on taking accountability instead of making excuses. I was cruel to you on Christmas Eve 2 years ago. Not by accident, not because I was stressed, but because I was jealous and petty and wanted to hurt you, the way I felt hurt by my own life not being as perfect as I pretended. I lied to our family to avoid consequences. I spent a year making you the villain when I was the one who acted unforgivably. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that I finally understand what I did. And I'm sorry, Kelly. Truly, deeply sorry. You deserve better from me. You always have. Asterisk I read it 5 times, looking for the catch, the subtle shift back to blame, the excuse disguised as an apology. But it seemed genuine. Raw. Honest in a way Gwen had never been before. I showed it to Aunt Kristen over lunch. What do you think? I asked. She studied the card carefully. I think it's a start. Real accountability is about sustained change in behavior, not just pretty words. But the words matter, too. Do I respond? That's up to you. What do you want? I considered the question. I want to stop carrying this around. I want to believe people can change, but I also want to protect myself from getting hurt again. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, she said gently. You can acknowledge her apology without rushing back into a relationship. You can leave the door open without walking through it right away. So, I sent Gwen a brief text. I got your card. Thank you for the apology. I need more time, but I appreciate you taking responsibility. She responded immediately, take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready. Or if you're never ready, I'll understand that, too. September brought my busiest season yet. Between fall weddings and corporate events, I barely had time to sleep. Paige and I hired 2 more part-time assistants and started looking at bigger office spaces. The business I'd started as a distraction from family pain had become something substantial and meaningful. One evening in mid-September, I found myself in a hotel ballroom at midnight, supervising breakdown after a wedding reception for 300 guests. My feet ached, my voice was hoarse from calling instructions to vendors, and I was running on coffee and adrenaline. But as I watched the last of the centerpieces get packed away, I felt a deep satisfaction that teaching had never quite provided. This was mine. I had built it from scratch, grown it through reputation and hard work, shaped it into something that genuinely helped people during one of the most stressful experiences of their lives. No tenure committees, no standardized testing pressures, no bureaucratic red tape. Just me, my team, and our ability to solve problems creatively and efficiently. Paige appeared beside me with 2 bottles of water. Last load's heading out. Venue manager says we're good to go. You're a lifesaver, I replied, accepting the water gratefully. Get some sleep. We've got the Howard consultation at 10 tomorrow. The corporate gala? Right, 500 people, VIP section, live entertainment, that's the one. Could be our biggest contract yet if we land it. She grinned despite her obvious exhaustion. We'll land it. Nobody coordinates like you do, Kelly. That confidence in my abilities, freely given without qualification or comparison, still felt foreign. For so long, I'd been the sister who taught high school while Gwen ran charity galas and sat on nonprofit boards. The implication had always been that what I did was nice enough, but not as impressive or valuable. Now, I was coordinating events that rivaled anything Gwen had ever organized and getting paid handsomely for it. The corporate gala Paige mentioned would net us a $40,000 fee if we landed the contract. That single event would earn more than I had made in 3 months of teaching. The money still felt surreal sometimes. I'd opened my business checking account and watched the balance grow from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands. I'd paid off my car. I'd started contributing to a retirement account. I bought Aunt Kristen a nice dinner to thank her for her support. And she'd cried when I insisted on picking up the check. You've come so far, she'd said, squeezing my hand across the table. I'm so proud of who you've become, Kelly. I'm still the same person, I protested. No, you're not. You're the person you were supposed to be before your family convinced you to make yourself smaller. This version is the real you. Maybe she was right. This version of me spoke up when vendors tried to push unnecessary services. This version negotiated firmly, but fairly, confident in her worth. This version hired good people and trusted them to do excellent work. This version didn't apologize for taking up space or asking to be compensated appropriately for her expertise. Teaching had been rewarding in its own way, but it had also kept me in a role everyone understood and could categorize. Teachers were noble and underpaid, easy to respect in theory while patronizing in practice. Event planners, especially successful ones, commanded a different kind of regard. We were entrepreneurs, business owners, professionals who'd taken risks and built something from nothing. The Howard Gala consultation went brilliantly. I presented a detailed proposal with mood boards, vendor recommendations, timeline projections, and budget breakdowns. The company's events director, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia, asked sharp questions that I answered without hesitation. When she asked about my experience with events of this scale, I walked her through 3 comparable projects I'd coordinated, complete with client testimonials and photographs. "You're hired," Patricia said before I'd even finished the presentation. "When can you start?" Landing that contract felt like crossing an invisible threshold. I wasn't just a wedding planner anymore. I was running a legitimate events company that corporations trusted with their major functions. That night, I took Paige and our 2 part-time assistants, Monica and Jasmine, out for a celebration dinner and gave them all bonuses. To the team, I toasted, raising my wine glass. "None of this happens without all of you." To the boss, Paige countered, who took a chance on an untested college grad and built something incredible. We clinked glasses, for women who'd found each other through a combination of luck and determination, who worked ridiculous hours, solved impossible problems, and somehow managed to laugh through the chaos. This was what success actually looked like. Not the glossy, perfect life Gwen projected on social media, but the messy, exhausting, deeply satisfying reality of building something meaningful. At Thanksgiving, I went to my parents' house, just the 3 of us again. No extended family, no Gwen. Mom made all my favorite dishes, and we spent the evening playing board games and talking about anything except the previous 2 years. "Do you think you'll ever forgive your sister?" Mom asked as I was leaving. "I don't know. Forgiveness feels complicated, but I'm not angry anymore. And that's something." "It's a good something," Dad said, hugging me goodbye. "Anger was poisoning you. I'm glad you found a way to let it go, Kelly." The truth was, I hadn't let it go so much as I'd grown around it. The hurt was still there, but it no longer defined me. I had built a life I loved, surrounded myself with people who valued me, created something meaningful from scratch. Gwen's cruelty had set all that in motion. And while I wouldn't thank her for it, I also wouldn't let it keep controlling my story. December came around again, 3 years after that awful Christmas Eve. I spent the holiday season coordinating a massive client event and attending a quiet dinner with my parents. Gwen sent another card, again without expectation of response, updating me on her therapy progress and her family. I didn't respond this time, but I also didn't throw it away. I filed it in my desk drawer, acknowledgement without commitment. On Christmas Eve, I found myself driving past my parents' old house, now owned by strangers. The windows glowed the same golden light, but different people sat around that dining room table. Different lives, different dramas, different disappointments and triumphs unfolding behind that familiar facade. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago, standing in the snow with a bag of presents, desperately seeking approval from people who couldn't see her worth. She felt like a stranger now. My phone buzzed with a text from Paige. "Mrs. Henderson wants to add ice sculptures to the venue." I told her we'd call tomorrow to discuss budget implications. "Merry Christmas, boss." I smiled and texted back. "Perfect handling. Merry Christmas to you, too, Paige." This was my life now. Built from ashes and rejection into something solid and mine. Gwen had meant to break me that Christmas Eve, to remind me of my place in the family hierarchy. Instead, she freed me to discover I didn't need their hierarchy at all. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the catalyst for becoming who you were always meant to be. Sometimes the door that slams in your face is exactly the shove you needed to find your own path forward. I drove back to my apartment through falling snow, ready to spend another Christmas exactly how I chose to spend it, in my own time, on my own terms, living a life that finally felt entirely and authentically mine. The presents in that bag 3 years ago had gone to charity eventually, but I'd given myself something better. Permission to stop seeking approval I'd never needed, and to start building something no one could ever take away. 3 years ago, Gwen had told me to go ruin someone else's holiday. Instead, I'd ruined her narrative about me. And that, I realized as I unlocked my apartment door, was the sweetest revenge of all.